Shalom, Moriah ben Abraham, and today we're going to talk about why you shouldn't celebrate any holiday before watching this. Now, join us here if you haven't already done so. Hit the subscribe link below, because on this channel, Talmidei Yehoah, we are providing videos that will increase your understanding of Torah and that will help us all in our return to Yehoah. So let's get into it. Why are people celebrating the holidays they celebrate? Are these holidays that most people celebrate the very ones that the creator of heaven and earth, the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov expect us to celebrate? Take, for example, Christmas. Let me pull up an article here on Christmas. You can find this yourself. Just Google. Look for the origin story, the real origin story of Christmas. You'll find articles like this one where it says, Christmas isn't Christian. The Pagan Roots of the Winter Holiday by Laurel Dickman. I'm not promoting any particular person's ideas on this topic. In fact, I encourage you to do your own research. There are many articles and much historical evidence to show that Christmas simply is a pagan festival that was rebranded. I just chose this one randomly because it has in it the information that I think is most helpful for you to quickly see. For example, in this article, notice it says here, the two most notable pagan winter holidays were Germanic Yule and Roman Saturnalia. Christian missionaries gave these holidays a makeover, and they are now known as Christmas. Do you get that? Christmas is the combining of the Germanic Yule festival and the Roman Saturnalia, and they just renamed it and made it Christmas, Christ Mass. But it's really a pagan festival. Look at what it says about that festival. Saturnalia was a lawless, drunken time in Rome where literally anything was okay. This was the original purge in which the laws were suspended for a brief stretch of time. Saturn, the Roman Elohim, they say God, the Roman god of agriculture, liberation, and time, parties, was celebrated at what is perhaps the most famous of the Roman festivals, the Saturnalia. It was a time of feasting, role reversals, free speech, gift giving, and revelry. Read gender-bending sex, drinking, telling people off, trading gifts, and doing whatever you want. After solstice, the darkest night of the year, the renewal of light and the coming of the new year was celebrated in the later Roman Empire at the Dies Natalis of Sol Invictus, the birthday of the unconquered sun, on December 25th. And you can go on, do your own research here, read about Yule, read about all of the various aspects of this festival that really comes straight from pagan customs. Do your own reading on this. See for yourself how all of these customs that are associated with this festival have nothing to do with Torah, nothing to do with anything that we're supposed to practice if we're trying to really return to Yehoah, if we're really trying to follow what is written in the Torah of Moshe. And if you haven't already done so, please watch The Key to Understanding the Word of Yah, which helps you understand the way we should approach the holy text that our ancestors left for us, the text that was inspired to be written so that we would have everything we need if we really going to worship the Elohim, that is the strongest revealed authority. If we're going to worship the strongest revealed authority of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, that is Yehoah, our Elohim, our way of worshiping him should be based on his revelation to us, which we find in the Torah. That means the words written and passed down to us, al pi Yehoah, that is by the mouth of Yehoah, al pi Yehoah, biyad Moshe. Those are the words that we should follow, and that is explained very clearly in the series on the key to understanding the word of Yah. But continuing here, Christmas is as pagan as it gets. And basically most of the festivals that people celebrate come from similar pagan origins, including the festival of Hanukkah. Looking at the pagan origins of Hanukkah, I found this article on JSTOR. This article is entitled Hanukkah, Its Origins and Its Significance. It says here, this is written, by the way, by Solomon Zetelin from Dropsy College. It says, it is well known that the festival of Hanukkah originated during the Hellenistic period. Hanukkah originated during the Hellenistic period. That's a time when the Israelite people had already been carried off to captivity. The kingdoms of both Israel and Yehuda had been completely destroyed. Many of the Israelites had fled into Africa, as the book of Jeremiah closes with, and those who went into Babylonia and Persia, when they came back, they were never autonomous in the same way. The temple that was built, this second temple, never was filled with Jehovah's glory. Things were never as they were prior to the destruction of the temple that Shlomo built. And so during this Hellenistic period is when they came up with this new festival. But was it really new? And is it something that we should actually celebrate today? I'm going to show you from the Torah, no. We should not be adding any new festivals to what was already recorded for us in the Torah. And usually when people add in a new festival, they're not adding it in simply because they're trying to worship Yahweh. It's usually done to assimilate, to go along with things that are already being celebrated by the people and just renaming it to make it acceptable. Just like they did for Christmas. They renamed the Festival of Saturnalia with Christian names to make it more acceptable. So they did with the Feast of Lights, the Festival of Lights. They just renamed the same Saturnalia festival to something that would be acceptable to people who were practicing the religion of Judaism. And so, as you'll see in this article here, I'm not going to read the whole thing. It says, and just skipping down a little bit, that some have suggested that the festival of Hanukkah was originally instituted as an imitation of the festival of Tabernacles. Now, the reason this is being said is because at the time that the festival of Tabernacles occurs, which would have been in the 7th month on the Hebrew calendar, somewhere, let's say, between September and October, at that time, the Greeks had possession of the temple. And so it took them until a few months later, the 9th month on the Hebrew calendar, to actually have that victory over the Greek possession of the temple and to purify or cleanse the temple and then celebrate this festival. This is the tradition that some have. And so they're saying, well, since they couldn't celebrate Hag Sukkot, which is the Feast of Tabernacles, during the 7th month, they kept it in the 9th month. Okay, let's suppose that that's even the history. Even if that was the history, is there any justification to continue to keep Hag Sukkot, which is in Torah, 2 months late? Even at a time when you're still keeping it in the right month, in the 7th month, why would you still continue to keep it in the 9th month? Makes no sense, does it? And of course, there are other reasons why people believe that it was initiated in the 9th month. Notice it says here, others were of the opinion the festival of Hanukkah in its origin was not at all a Jewish festival, but was borrowed from the pagan world. A festival of Dionysius, according to some, was in reality the origin of Hanukkah. In fact, this is not the only author, by the way, that comes up with this idea. Let's take a look at some of the other articles that make the same point. And I encourage you to do your own research. Don't rely on me. Do your own research on this. But the main point you're going to get from this video is the fact that according to the Torah, we should only stick to the festivals that are written al pi Yehovah. That means by the mouth of Yehovah, b'yad Moshe, by the hand of Moshe. The festivals that are recorded for us in the Torah. And if they're not there, we shouldn't be worried to observe them. That has nothing to do with our return to Yehovah. And in many cases, it is a form of idolatry. It's a form of pagan worship. That's what I'm here to wake you up to see. You need to see the pagan origins and avoid these pitfalls. Here's another article about Hanukkah. You can find this on myjewishlearning.com. Hanukkah and the winter solstice. See, this is not hidden from people. People are aware of the fact that Hanukkah has origins with the celebration of paganism, of celebrating the pagan festival of the winter solstice. In other words, Saturnalia. Another name for this festival of Saturnalia, a festival of lights, a feast of lights. Same name still being used by some for the festival of Hanukkah. Let's look at another article. I'm not going to get into all of these in great detail. Here's one website, Second Nexus. Again, you just Google. You'll find so many articles on this topic. Does Hanukkah have pagan origins? History and the origins of the Jewish holiday. Skipping down in this article, you'll notice that it says, according to Hanukkah history, this holiday is always held during the darkest days of the year. This means that the Festival of Lights is always held during the longest evenings of the year. The winter solstice was a time when pagan religions could celebrate the rebirth of the sun god. Yes, they worship the sun as their Elohim, as their God. However, commemorating Hanukkah during this time also allowed Judaism to reclaim this pagan tradition for a religious celebration. Do you see what is being said here? This religion of Judaism took this pagan festival and claimed it for themselves, and they assimilated what the pagans around them were doing, and that's why they celebrated Hanukkah. You'll find an interesting article in Sefaria. Go to sefaria.org. You'll find Hanukkah's pagan origins, Saturnalia, unicorns, and the fear of the setting sun. We're not going to take the time to read all of this. If you take the time to read this, you'll see that the idea of Hanukkah has no origins in the writings of Moshe and what was revealed to Moshe. Hanukkah is not a festival that those who are trying to return to Yahweh should actually celebrate. Let me point out here that the reason Israel went into captivity was all about idolatry. It was idolatry in the past, and it was idolatry even after the Israelites returned from Babylon. Those who did into the land during when the Persians allowed them to go back, idolatry continued. And idolatry is a problem that Israelites have right down to our day. And that's really the problem with religion. Groupthink, following the crowd. In fact, as I was searching for material on this topic, I found this very interesting article on biblicalarchaeology.org entitled First Person, the Sun God in the Synagogue. Notice what it says here. This writer says, I, of course, had been thinking of the mosaic pavement of the Hamath Tiberias Synagogue of the Sea of Galilee. It wasn't only that there was Helios, that's the Greek sun god, riding his 4-horse chariot right there in the middle of the zodiac. So in other words, the image you see here on the right, that's an image that's on the floor of a synagogue, a mosaic that's on the pavement of the Beth Alpha synagogue in Israel. I've been to that synagogue in Israel. But just think about it. Why would this 4th century synagogue have an image of Helios, a Greek Elohim, on its floor? This represented the fact that there had been great assimilation, a great mixing, a great acceptance of the Greek Elohim. We should not embrace Greek Elohim. We need to reject all idolatry, all forms of idolatry. And that means we need to reject and put away from us every pagan festival, no matter how it's renamed or how it is rebranded. Look at what it says in the second book of Melachim, chapter 17, beginning in verse 6. It says here, in the 9th year of Hoshea, the sovereign of Ashur captured Shomron and exiled Yisrael to Ashur and settled them in Halach and Habor, the river of Gazon, and in the cities of the Medes. Now this came to be because the children of Israel had committed chet, that is, they transgressed. They went against the way of Yahweh, their Elohim, who had brought them up out of the land of Mitzrayim from under the hand of Pharaoh, sovereign of Mitzrayim, and feared other Elohim. Here they put feared other mighty ones. The Hebrew here is Vayir'u Elohim Acherim. In other words, they feared other Elohim and walked in the laws of the nations whom Yahweh had dispossessed from before the children of Israel, and of the sovereigns of Israel that they had made. And the children of Israel secretly did against Yahweh, their Elohim, matters that were not right. And they built for themselves high places in all their cities, from watchtower unto the walled city, and set up for themselves pillars of the Ashrim on every high hill and under every green tree, and burned incense there on all the high places, like the nations whom Yahweh had removed from their presence. And they did evil matters to provoke Yahweh, and served idols, of which Yahweh had said to them, do not do this. And Yahweh warned Israel and Yehudah through all of his prophets and every seer, saying, turn back from your evil ways, and keep, that is, guard my commandments, keep my commandments and my Torah, which they're saying here, law, according to all the Torah which I commanded your fathers, which I sent to you by my servants, the prophets. But they did not listen, and hardened their necks, like the necks of their fathers, who did not put their trust in Yahweh, their Elohim. And they rejected his Torah. They again say here laws, his Torah and his covenant that he had made with their fathers, and his witnesses, which he had witnessed against them, and went after worthlessness and became worthless, and after the nations who were around them, of whom Yahweh had commanded them not to do like them. Do you get the point? We're not supposed to follow the practices of the nations around us, meaning the non-Israelite nations, the heathen nations, the pagan nations. So if they celebrate Saturnalia, we're not supposed to copy them. They worship the sun, maybe personify the sun, call the sun Helios, or whatever they want to call the sun. We're not supposed to worship the sun. We're not supposed to celebrate the birth of the sun on December 25th, or earlier as with the Saturnalia festival, celebrating the winter solstice. None of that should be celebrated by us. We should not follow the ideas, customs, celebrations, or ways of the nations around us if we are the children of Israel, or those who join themselves to Israel through covenant, those who are committed to serving the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. If that's your goal, if your goal is to really worship the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, then we simply have to live according to what is written for us in the Torah. We have to return. We have to wake up. We have been deceived, hoodwinked into celebrating festivals that have nothing to do with the Torah, or actually get us to bow down and worship and follow the practices of the heathen, which are abominations to Yahweh. And it says here, continuing now in verse 16, and they left all the commands of Yahweh their Elohim, and made for themselves a molded image, 2 calves, and made an Asherah, and bowed themselves to all the hosts of heaven, and served Baal. You see, they worshiped the hosts of heaven. Same thing is still going on. People worshiping things that they see in the sky, worshiping the winter solstice, worshiping the fact that the sun starts to go up again on December 25th, the birth of the sun. Again, these are idolatrous practices that have been around for millennia and are now masquerading as somehow as festivals that people who follow the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov should actually participate in. We should repudiate these festivals and all these holidays that are being celebrated at this time of the year, and return to worshiping Yahweh and Yahweh alone. It says, verse 17, and caused their sons and daughters to pass through the fire, and practice divination, sorcery, and sold themselves to do evil in the eyes of Yahweh to provoke him. So Yahweh was very enraged with Israel and removed them from his presence. None was left but the tribe of Yehudah alone. Yehudah also did not guard, they say here. Again, the Hebrew behind not guard is shomer, which means to keep or to guard. I think keep is actually a better way to comprehend this, though. They did not keep the commands of Yehovah their Elohim, but walked in the Hebrew behind this. They have here laws. It's hukot. It means to actually the well-trodden paths. They walked instead in the well-trodden paths, the hukot of Yisrael, which they made. In other words, they didn't follow Yahweh either. Yehudah didn't. And they rejected, it says, verse 20, all the seed of Israel and afflicted them and gave them into the hand of the plunderers until he had cast them out from his presence. And of course, you know the history. Not only was the kingdom of Israel exiled, but eventually, because the kingdom of Yehudah followed in the same ways as Israel, they worshipped idols. They wouldn't turn back to Yehovah. Yehovah exiled the kingdom of Yehudah as well. The temple was destroyed. And it's come right down to us to this very day, living in this exiled state because we turned away from Yehovah. And the only way for this to change is for us to stop worshiping idols and to return. We were warned against this kind of idolatry. Notice the warning in Shemot chapter 23. He said, verse 32, do not make a covenant with them, nor with their Elohim. They're mistranslating this as the mighty ones. But the Hebrew word that's being used in this verse is also Elohim. They simply say they're mighty ones. So do not make a covenant with them, nor with their Elohim. Let them not dwell in your land, lest they make you commit chet, that is a transgression against me, when you serve their mighty ones, when it becomes a snare for you. So don't follow the way of the heathen. Perhaps this is summarized and made even more clear for us the way it was summarized for us by Moshe in the book of Devarim. These are the laws and right rulings which you guard to do in the land which Yahweh Elohim of your fathers is giving you to possess all the days that you live on the soil. Completely destroy all the places where the nations which you are dispossessing served their Elohim, on the high mountains and on the hills and under every green tree. And you shall break down their, they say, slaughter places. It's like the place where they do their sacrifices. And you shall smash their pillars, burn their asherim with fire. These are, again, various types of idols that were used by the people in the land. And you shall cut down their carved images and their mighty ones, their Elohim, and shall destroy their name out of that place. Do not do so to Yahweh, your Elohim. Now, there are some people who are going to say, well, okay, yes, Christmas has a pagan origin. Or let's say, yes, Hanukkah has a pagan origin. But we're not using it to worship the pagan Elohim. We're going to use it to worship. Here we're being told very clearly, Yahweh doesn't want us to use those pagan practices to worship him. We're not to follow the way of the heathen. We're not to follow, to take on the practices of the heathen nations around us, give them new names, and say, yeah, and we're going to worship Yahweh this way. These are abominations to Yahweh, and we should not use them at all. Skipping down in this chapter again, I would encourage you to read the whole thing. But let's skip down to verse 29. When Yahweh your Elohim does cut off from before you the nations which you go to dispossess, and you dispossess them and dwell in their land, guard yourself that you are not ensnared to follow them after they are destroyed from before you, and that you do not inquire about their Elohim, saying, how do these nations serve their Elohim? Let me do so too. Let me follow them. However they worship, whatever their idols they worship, okay, let's use that same method and use that to worship Yahweh. Doesn't work that way. Yahweh says here very plainly in verse 31, do not do so to Yahweh, your Elohim. For every abomination which Yahweh hates, they have done to their Elohim, for they even burn their sons and daughters in the fire to their Elohim. All the words I'm commanding you, you keep it, guard it, to do it, and do not add to it nor take away from it. That means to say, we don't need new festivals. We don't need the festival of Kwanzaa. We don't need the festival of Hanukkah. We need no new festivals. If your goal is to humble yourself, to realize that the reason we're in the state we're in is because we turned away from Yahweh, and we and our ancestors turned away from Yahweh and worshiped idols, and Yahweh exiled us. He expelled us from the land. He brought us through captivity. And if our goal is to return to Yahweh, the only way we can do that is to embrace what's written in the Torah of Moshe, Al Pi Yahweh B'Yad Moshe, and to practice what's there. And we don't need to add anything to it. Don't water it down. Don't dilute it. Don't mix it with the practices of this pagan world. We are given very clear guidance on the festivals we should celebrate in the book of Vayikra, chapter 23. You could turn there. You'll read all the festivals we should observe in Vayikra, chapter 23. These festivals are also repeated for us in their order, in the order in which we should celebrate them in the book of Bamidbar, chapter 28 and chapter 29. All that we need to celebrate, they're all recorded there. And we should not add to it or take away from it. We should only celebrate what's recorded for us, Al Pi Yahweh B'Yad Moshe. I'll have a lot more to share with you on this topic and on the festivals we should observe in future videos. If you enjoyed this video, if this video helped you learn something today, share it with your friends. Do remember to hit like and subscribe below. Shalom, shalom.